Hey everybody, this is your logical libertarian here, and this video, as you can probably see by the title, is about Antifa or anti-fascist, mostly the American side, because I'm from America and that's what I want to talk about. We've had our share of Antifa action, especially near where I'm from. I'm from Northern California, and Berkeley's in California. It's University of California, Berkeley, so it's in my neck of the woods, respectively, relatively, especially if you're watching internationally or on the other side of the country. Now, of course, I wanted to go over a quick thing before I begin on this one. My last episode, my last stream about firearms and the militia, I didn't get to finish. There was about 10 to 15 minutes that got cut off, in which I basically discuss how my biggest issue is how it isn't the entirety of the militia, it isn't the entirety of them, but it is the select few that hold on to that ideology and those that also go along with it and don't question it. How it is politically driven and not actually a functional militia. I also was going to get to my own stance on firearms, which is pretty laxed, I guess you could say. I support background checks, and that's really about it, and limitations on like explosives and nuclear, biological, and chemical. Like, but if you want to have a fully automatic 249, I don't give a shit. Kind of like, I'm okay with that being legal. One other thing I didn't really get to go over was the role of the police and how law enforcement are actually technically a form of constitutional militia. They serve the very purpose militia is supposed to do, which is enforce laws, repel insurrections, and kind of stamp out repel invasions, stamp out insurrection. They're supposed to keep the peace and uphold the law, and of course uphold the Constitution. And then the militias aren't as good at that. For them, it's less about actually abiding by the letter of the law and more abiding by their unique interpretation based on what they subjectively want and their political ideologies, which is dangerous, especially because they're private, unchecked, and armed. And like I said, I have nothing against private, unchecked, armed citizens, but when you get organized and you have political motives, it's the danger. I also went into the liberal side and how I can't stand the liberal arguments against militia, against guns, how it's also there's no thought behind it. There's no understanding behind it, that it's just purely ideological, and the attacks are not based in reality. It's based on fear, and how both sides play a lot on fear with respect to very little knowledge. So they're afraid of situations because they don't have the full story or don't have a full understanding and are making a very poor decision. I feel that these groups that kind of join these militias, not all of them, but a lot of people join them with a prepper mentality and think that they're going to be there for playing war. I mean, you saw it, some of the videos that came in from the people holding down that the government building during the Oregon thing. There's a lot of negative around there, but it doesn't mean that I discourage militias at all. I think militias should be good. I think that while there's a lot of things I distrust or I think are wrong or disagree with, those militias are full of good people who do a lot of good, and those people should be supported and encouraged. And I continue to support and encourage them. I do offer them my support when I see them, or if I run into them online or whatever. Those are people that are doing the right thing. I just wish they would be more vocal in skepticism or in criticism of those who push bad ideas, like the being against humanism thing. That's retarded. But anyway, that's what this video is about. It's just kind of a quick summary of the end of that. We're going to talk about the anti-fascists, or anti-Faschistica, which I think that's German. I don't know. Don't know. So Antifa, that's not a thing. Antifa, no, anti-fascists. It's a big, popular thing coming around in America, in the U.S. And I don't necessarily... I'll be upfront. I don't like them. Now, there are certain elements of them that actually fall under that whole militia thing, but it's kind of ironic we go into that. There are some videos of people who are anti-fascist. They're part of the Antifa thing. They're armed, whether they have actual weapons or not. They're doing marches, armed marches on public property. They fall under the same category of being armed and going to these protests that get violent. And they're potentially... they're borderline terrorism. And I don't like it either. Any messages? No. But let's get a little bit about Antifa. Let's hear from their own Facebook page, which isn't perfect. But I guess a little bit of history. Anti-fascism did start more in pre-World War II, World War II, the 1920s and 30s. And this is just kind of based off of a quick glance over of everything. It started in resistance to Mussolini and Hitler. It was resistance to that. And when you understand, anyone who can be anti-fascist is anyone who just is against fascism. Sorry about that. Anti-fascists are anyone who's against fascism. And what I mean by that is anyone who doesn't fall into fascism or fascism doesn't like. Now, fascism is... it's authoritarian, like nationalism. It's similar in a way to because to be honest, Stalinist Marxism or Stalinist communism is similar to fascism in the way that it's authoritarian and there's a heavy nationalist concept, because when you get to national communism at a national scale, you have to be nationalist to go along with it, which is ironic. And the fascists and communists hated each other, the Marxists hated each other. But fascists are against liberalism in the way of classical liberalism, like democracy. They also stand against communism, and I think that's because fascists usually favor a somewhat capitalist society. And this is Wikipedia, but fascists support like mandatory military service. They support an entire more police state, authoritarian. Sorry, I'm not feeling well. And they very much are, they support a pseudo-capitalist society. They support a mixed economy, in which case there is some free market, but there is control over who can have the free market. It's very protectionist. It's very biased. And I mean, the other thing too, and it mentions this, fascist is used a lot as a pejorative, similar to SJW. It's gone from being actual political ideology, people who follow the political ideology, to anybody who seems to be at all enforcing of law or supportive of the military or having any pride or gratitude for being in a nation, which is where modern Antifa, especially with America, has kind of come. They're not anti-fascist as in they're anti-fascist. They're anti-fascist as in they're anti whoever they used the fascist in the form of a pejorative against. Similar to how a lot of conservatives use the term communist or commie, or leftist against anyone, to describe anyone who they disagree with. Not because they actually are a communist or because they are actually left-wing, but it's because they disagree with them, thus they must be a communist, they must be left-wing. It's very fallacious thinking. But to get a grip on some of the ideas, and they show this picture here, kind of, I think, like this page. Oh, I guess we'll like this page for the sake of seeing everything. Nope, we don't get to like it. No, we're gonna unlike it. Then fuck that. But I'd say this is the big thing that shows the issues, especially of the United States Antifa movement. They're not really against fascism as more as they're trying to radically and violently promote progressivism. Modern progressivism, or regressivism, as a lot of people like to put it, and I think it definitely hits the nail on the head. Because they use violence, and it's so funny. It's so ironic. But this is where, they say we will continue to fight against fascism and the far right, because it is very much deemed that fascism is typically on the far right end of the spectrum, pro-military, pro-corporation, usually pro-religious government too, like Mussolini's Italy and Hitler's Germany. They were against certain religions and promoted others. But the campaign is against bigotry, and that's the thing. It's against bigotry. Bigotry against refugees, immigrants, Muslims, Jews, people of color. So it's ironic. This is ironic for multiple things. First off, and weird. First, the irony is they're against bigotry. Now, bigotry is not an actual... It's not a government policy. It's really hard to enforce bigotry. Now, you can, but they're not standing against policies that are against these groups necessarily, like outright against the group, like laws that ban Muslims, laws that ban being gay, laws that ban being Jewish, laws that ban, or hinder rights for these groups that are accessible to other people. The only difference between them and those people is those rights, due to them being of this different demographic circumstance. That isn't the issue. It's more of just it's a violent continuation of the social justice warrior. It's literally the warrior in SJW. And the ironic part is they're combating against not a government concept, but an individual concept. They're combating against people... Sorry, I had to read that for a second. That's actually really funny. I have to respond to this. I honestly don't know which would be worse. If you can probably see on the video, one of my followers. Actually, you should check out his channel, Eldritch God. It's pretty good. He had a good compilation, speaking of SJW, as a response to some of it. But the ironic thing is they're not attacking a government or a state institution, which would be fascism. Fascism is a state institution. They're attacking private people having opinions that disagree with them. The ironic thing is an organized group attacking that is just being a state institution away from being fascist. So that's one of the ironic things about American Antifa, is they're against people having different ideas and willing to violently coerce these people into not expressing those ideas, which, like I said, is, that's essentially the function of the secret police, which is a fascist element. Mussolini had secret police. Hitler had secret police. Granted, communist nations have a secret police as well. They're totalitarian. It's not strictly fascist, but it is very totalitarian, and fascism is totalitarian. It's ironic there. Now, the other part is, if you go back, you can see protectionism is a big part of it. Fascism is pseudo-economic in that groups that are seen deserving protection get those groups. That's why the Socialist Party, the National Socialist Party of Germany, the Nazis, they were pseudo-socialist. They were pseudo-capitalist, but they used protectionism, which was the socialist part of it, in which groups that were seen as being citizens that were given those extra protections, those almost you could say extra citizenary rights, were treated more above and had more, not equality, but almost social equity. That's where it also is ironic. These people are in favor of protectionism, which is another element of fascism. But they call themselves anti-fascists. Now, further, in the biggest thing, while I am not against violent revolution as a last resort, this nation was founded on violent revolution. We ended slavery violently. We ended fascism, sort of, violently. We combated it violently. I'm not against those concepts. However, I am one who is against using violence before exhausting other means. Now, what I mean by that is these groups, I think, and this is more speculation, pardon me and excuse me for being somewhat of a armchair psychologist here, and not even really an armchair psychologist because I have no psychology degree, but it seems that a lot of this violence and anger is coming from the frustration of the social justice advocates, social justice warriors, who are being debated, who are being somewhat embarrassed in being shown to have fallacious arguments, unreasoned positions, positions based on pseudoscience, showing that they're denying empirical fact, being neither rationalist nor empiricist, showing that they cannot have a good argument no matter what, and that their ideas are hypocritical, that they favor racism to combat racism, they favor sexism to combat sexism, they favor, discrimination against sexual orientation in order to combat discrimination against sexual orientation, and such and so forth. That frustration of just not getting their way, of not winning, I think is coming out in this violence, in this hate. And a lot of these people are people that are my age. They're millennials. I'm 25. These people are millennials. They want to matter. They want to mean something, and they're not. They feel like every step they take, they're getting punched in the face, figuratively and literally. If you watch videos, you can see. And it's difficult. It's difficult to prove that. Again, like I said, that's just speculation. But if this is so, and it's the frustration, and it's at that point, it makes it increasingly difficult to actually have the discussion that needs to be had. It's difficult to actually sit down and try and reach each other on a human level, on an intellectual level, on a respectful level. Not respectful in saying, okay, you have a good idea, but in offering the person the respect of listening to their idea, taking it into account, and then processing and responding. Even if that response isn't positive and very critical, and there's rejection with that response, it's still the respect of hearing the person out and trying to understand and trying to reach an understanding and a solution. But this is not trying to reach a solution. It is simply trying to hammer in an idea that's being rejected. And that's only something that's done by someone who doesn't want to, or is not willing to, which I guess those are the same thing, but is not willing to actually try and discuss and work out the issue. It's not by someone who wants to sit down and say, okay, these are my issues. This is my problem. This needs to be fixed. And then listen to the other side. It's a bunch of people who just, some of them, it seems, I mean, and these may be the fringe, the ones that are exposed in the media, seem to be just wanting to cause shit, to go out and punch people and get that. And that's also part of where I get this frustration thing, where these are people who, they go to Twitter, they go to Facebook, Instagram, whatever the fuck kids use these days. I'm not into that shit. I have Facebook and YouTube. That's what I use because I'm a dinosaur for my age. But they feel the frustration, and I can sense it when I debate these people too, of not getting people to their side. And it's not so much people understanding, it's not getting people to their side, not getting people to agree with them, not getting people to say, oh, you're right, I'm wrong, I'm a racist and need to check my privilege. Because, and you can see that just in one, they don't want to explain anything anymore. They don't want to take the time to drop sources. They just want to tell you and then run. And now they've gotten so tired of it, I feel a lot of them are just out wanting to cause violence and say, fine, you don't want to listen to me? I'm just going to punch you in the face until you do. Like I said, that's not all of them. There are plenty of people who do stick to the peaceful part, but there are a lot that are violent. And that violence goes completely against being anti-fascist. Because violence against fascism really only works one way. The fascists commit violence first. It wasn't the fascists who commit violence first. Because one, there aren't fascists in this situation. And two, it was Antifa that struck first. They protested and they rioted. They got violent. And if you want to include, which it may be wrong to include, if you want to include groups like Black Lives Matter under that fold, they've been throwing the first punches for a long time. And they're not getting their message across in a clear and honestly constructive way. They're just pissing everyone off and making us want to use, and that's the thing is, I understand with using police force to disperse the violence, to end the violence, to stop the violence before it happens, to arrest people who are being harmful and destructive before they cause serious harm to others or themselves. That can be seen as being fascist. However, that's the job of police, whether you're in a fascist society or a free liberal democracy from the West. And that line isn't being drawn. And that's the thing is that these people seem and this is just a problem I've seen. This is a rant that's kind of gone off the rails, but it's a problem I've seen with the modern left, the regressives, is that they are so up their ideology's ass, essentially, that they can't self-reflect. They can't look in a mirror and say, wow, am I being unreasonable? Am I being what I want to fight? Am I really, is this an action that will win people over? Or am I just doing this to make myself feel better? To make myself feel worthy? To make myself feel in charge or whatever? And that's what I feel is really at the crux of the issue. One second, I'm actually going to go on and read a couple things. So this is actually a good thing, and I hope he doesn't mind me reading this. I mean, he posted it to a live chat. But this person I talked about, the Eldritch God, like I said, check out the channel. It's a good channel. But they said the problem with social justice is that the conflict leads to strength, and the concept of diversity is needed for conflict, and that hence diversity is strength. But the issue is that they want diversity without conflict, and I think I understand a bit what you mean there. Maybe not necessarily conflict of violence, but conflict is in disagreement. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I agree that they want diversity, and they don't even want necessarily diversity of true diversity, where conflict would arise. Diversity from conflict is diversity of ideas, true different groups, different tribes coming together and such. Whereas the diversity without conflict is merely superficial diversity. It's fake, but I agree too with the negativity is needed to weed out the bad. Yeah, that is a good example. You do need shame in that, and I agree there too. Yeah. And I agree too there, and that's an issue too of the divisiveness. I'm going to get back to your last point that you made before about the being your ideas, being what separates you, and that kind of goes back to this too, and going back to the concept of just using pejorative. Now, saying this frustration comes out. These people are upset. This is where the use of pejorative came out. It started with the alt-right, and then it evolved into fascist. I remember seeing this too, because a lot of people were like, oh, you're alt-right, and then some people who were alt-right were kind of like, I'm a Trump supporter, and they seemed fascist. They seemed white nationalist. And whether they were or not, if they are, I personally am not in favor of white nationalism. I can do a video on that myself another day. It's like, I'm not in favor of any sort of nationalism other than supporting your country and being in favor of supporting the freedoms and laws that you have. Like, I guess I'm in favor of patriotic nationalism, but not like nationalism for the sake of nationalism. Anyway, going back to the concept of pejorative, the use of fascist is pejorative because it's not attacking someone, like you said. It's putting the idea of someone being a fascist as if they are a fascist. And similarly, it's assigning those superficial terms, as you also use the example of whiteness, maleness, as being ideologies, as being stances that are deeper than just having your ideas. In a way, a shortcut sort of straw man that's easy to knock down, easy to light on fire, and show everybody else, look, this is on fire, I can burn it down, it's wrong. Which is where and that's the danger of pejoratives, and I'll admit that I myself and many other people have used social justice warrior, regressive in the same way. But it doesn't get to this sort of violence. It doesn't get to rallying in a crowd of hooded and masked people with firecrackers and brass knuckles and pepper spray to assault anyone who may or may not disagree with me if they don't answer quickly. And this is something that I brought up. I didn't quite brought up in the militia video either, but that's something that definitely disturbs me, is a group that is so swift to violence and aggression on just simply whether or not you are in the tribe, in the group, fit the ideology, and fit the bill. It becomes chaotic and dangerous, and like I said, it's borderline terrorism. And These people, they're borderline terrorism, and they are, like I said, their ideas being put to law away from being fascists themselves. Silencing free speech, silencing diversity of ideas, silencing the free marketplace of ideas, which is extremely important. Liberal, conservative, libertarian, anarchist, whatever, all agree that that is important. Many agree that the marketplace of ideas is important. I would say if you consider yourself an anti-fascist and you agree with these ideas here of, being against bigotry and all this other stuff, by all means, go to the marketplace, put that out there. Speak your ideas, put it into YouTube videos, go to your campus, go to debates, host debates, run for office, advocate, do some of the many peaceful protests that have happened, but do not resort to violence, because when you resort to violence to push an idea, you become a fascist. Well, you become a terrorist. But if you expect to be a part of the government, you are a wishful fascist. You are a prospective fascist. So I'm going to check the chat one more time. I agree. That's actually spot on. I think you are perfect on that with this. If I may, I'm going to read this again. So, this the Eldritch God, that's the name of the channel. They put in the chat that they want, and this is they being Antifa or SJW, kind of somewhat interchangeable. They want the world to be quote-unquote fair. If life was fair, every crappy thing that happened to you is your fault, which is true. And that's how I feel. I feel that everything is on you. They believe in a zero-sum game where no one can win without someone else losing. However, in an unfair world, everyone can lose, but everyone can win. You can win even if you don't deserve it. It's called hope. But they have no hope. They have only anger and hate, which I honestly feel that they all that, but I feel that sums up a lot of the people, especially those that are being violent. There's a lot of anger and hate, and it's not necessarily anger and hate, and some of it is bigoted, some of it is obviously, and I think it's misguided too. But this is why they demand free stuff, and I think that's also why the attack on those they seem to be deemed to be the status quo or those in power, like whites, males, whatever, straight people, cis people. That's why there's so much hostility. You see, the people of color being angry at white people, women being angry at men, and the assumption is that, and I think this is a lot of projection actually, the assumption is that all cis people hate trans people. Why? Because there are a lot of trans people that hate cis people. All straight people hate gay people, non-straight people. Why? Because this person in particular who's saying this, who is not heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual, whatever, they have a strong dislike towards straight people. All white people are racist, and this might be said by someone who is racist towards white people who is not white, who's Latino or black or something else. And I think a lot of that is projection. And this fascism is a form of projection as well. And yeah, that's why they demand, and yeah, the rich, then there's not so much, I think, the rich consume with guilt. I think a lot of the cuck, as you refer to, are consumed with guilt. And I think some of it is, I guess you could say, the Brian Griffin type, the kind of racist, and you can even see the racism or sexism, but trying to atone for that, in a way, atoning for sins, if you want to go religious on it, because they recognize their own hate, or they're struggling with their own hatred within them, and they're trying to not only project it onto other people to make themselves feel normal, but they're trying to, and this is where the virtue signaling comes in, trying to show that they're not, to make other people accept them. And that's where I feel like a lot, and you can see though the hidden the underlying racism or sexism or homophobia, whatever words you want to use to describe it, in the racism of low expectations or the sexism of low standards. Atheism Unstoppable put that pretty well, actually. I agree with that. That is very much it. But that's mostly don't want to read that at the moment. But I hope I tried to give them a fair bit. I mean, I applaud people who want to stand up for ideas. However, and as someone who is willing to stand up and fight both in the debate stage as well in the ring, I guess you could say. I'm an armed citizen, so I'm not afraid to defend myself with that. But being someone who's in favor of standing up for yourself, I'm not in favor of using violence to enforce an idea or using violence to push an agenda, to push an idea. And I feel that that's a form of totalitarianism as well as a form of terrorism. And I feel that that's where the anti-fascist movement's kind of lost its way. And I don't think they're going to see it because the other issue is, like many groups with ideologies, they deal in absolutes. So they don't see themselves as being one. They won't be self-critical. It's hard to red pill them, to borrow a term from many people who discuss this topic. They won't red pill themselves, and they will not. They'll only usually take criticism as either hostility or complete disagreement and evidence of being the enemy, evidence of being fascist. And that's the issue too, is in a way, and a lot of people have made this discussion too, similar to how a lot of people who mostly agree but disagree on a little bit get annoyed when people make that minor disagreement huge. Like, let's say myself and Ron Paul, I don't know how much we agree or disagree, but we may disagree on like abortion or gay marriage. And if I were to make that small disagreement, maybe that it's huge, it's important, but that one or two issue disagreement, some big like, oh, well, he's just a far right conservative kook because he doesn't agree with me completely. Similarly to that, how a lot of people use, well, you disagree with me on one or two issues, you must be the complete opposite of me. Oh, you don't disagree with me on this. You seem empathetic. You seem this. Oh, but you're not in favor of sanctuary cities, or you're in favor of banning, travel temporarily from a certain country. Well, you must be a fascist, because only a fascist do that, and it comes to that absolutes as well. So that's where it's upsetting, and I hate to see the hypocrisy. But yeah, I'm glad though that we can at least agree on that. And thank you. I want to thank the channel, the Eldritch God, for stopping by. I'm glad to see some stuff in my feed. Just trying to get onto it live. Yeah, that's very true. The absolutes thing is dangerous, but I'm going to try to do this again, trying to do it once a week or a couple times a week. I got to try to get my other YouTube channel up again. I've been working on that, but I'm wanting to get involved again. I took a break, kind of off of the lead of Jeff for Justice, because he said he was going to take a break. I think getting involved in politics can kind of fry your brain. But yeah, And yeah, actually, I wouldn't mind that. Let's add. Um, but yeah, thanks to everybody too who's been watching. I think it's only been a few people, but if you're watching this after the live stream, thank you for checking it out. Make sure to subscribe if you have not. As I've said multiple times, and this is not planned either, go check out the Eldritch God's channel. It's pretty good. I'm actually on one of his I don't know if it's still up. I am one of 5,000, I think, respondents to a BuzzFeed video. So, and I'm like, there are some people who I really look up to in that. So it's good. It's good. He's got other good content as well. So please go check it out. And check us out next time. Try to be less impromptu. So thanks for watching. Bye. I hope this doesn't break it.